Good evening, everybody. My name is Arnold Smith. I'm the president of the board for the New Westminster Chamber of Commerce, and I just want to thank you all for coming. I want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territories, the traditional unceded territories of the Kakite First Nation. Really want to thank you all for being here to participate in the electoral process. I think it's really important. I'd like to also thank the Justice Institute for providing this amazing space. And all of the volunteers who are here, all of the chamber board members who are here to help facilitate this event. I'd also like to thank and acknowledge all of the candidates who are here today. When someone decides to run for political office, it takes an incredible amount of effort, resources, and time. Time away from their families, time away from their business or career, time away from pleasurable pursuits, and consider why they do that. The cynical in us might say that they do it for personal gain, but in my role at the Chamber, I've met a lot of politicians, and in my experience, they do it because they see a problem in the world that they want to have solved. And they're willing to personally sacrifice their time and effort so that issue gets some attention, so that our community can be better. So for that, I think each of them should be commended. So I suggest that you can repay that effort by having an open mind. I personally believe that as a society, we are stronger when we work together, and that requires understanding and collaborating with a diversity of viewpoints. And I'm looking forward to hearing all those viewpoints tonight, which is going to help all of us to choose the person we want to champion our community for the federal government. I'd also like to acknowledge our sponsor for the evening, the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. Very much like the Chamber, they are a member-based organization representing 14,000 realtors in Metro Vancouver. They celebrated a 100-year anniversary. Not quite as old as the Chamber, but not too shabby. So they represent the interests of both the realtors and the public in terms of the business of real estate. They really involve issues concerning legislation and vitality for the communities of all levels of government. That's what happens when you go off script. I want to thank their involvement with the Chamber, the sponsorship of this event, and I just want to introduce past President Phil Moore to come up and say a few words. Phil?
Thank you, Arnold. I'm Phil Moore, past President of the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. Welcome to this federal candidate meeting. I believe we can all agree that the upcoming federal election, taking place on October 21st, will likely be a pivotal one, and platform policies focused on making market housing more affordable will help to play a key role in determining which candidate and which party is elected. This is why the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver is sponsoring this event. I hope this candidates meeting helps you make an informed decision on which party and candidate can best represent you in Ottawa. Thank you very much for taking the time to attend this event, and I'm sure we'll learn a lot. Thank you.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for tonight, Vice President of the Board, Scott McAlpine. He is the President of Integrated Analytics and Research Ltd, and he has a very impressive list of letters behind his name. He is a BA, an MA, an LLM, and a PhD. To list all of Scott's career accomplishments would literally take the rest of the evening, but suffice to say that he easily gains the respect and the admiration of all who get to know him, and we are lucky to have him on our board. Over to you, Scott.
Well, thank you very much, Arnold, and thank you, candidates. Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. My role tonight is to moderate this forum for the upcoming federal election on October 21st, 2019. It's my role to keep us on time, on topic, and in order. Tonight's format is that of a question and answer forum, not a debate. I will be brief. Our rules, candidates, are as follows. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement from the podium. The order has been determined in advance by law. Following that, we will have a series of questions for each candidate. One will be from our sponsor, and the remainder will be from the floor. I will read each question to the candidates, who will have up to 90 seconds each to answer the question. This will be done with the candidates in their position at the table sharing microphones. I will vary the order of candidate responses. After the question and answer, we will then provide the candidates with the opportunity to make a brief closing statement of up to 2 minutes in duration from the podium. The order will be exactly the same as for the opening statements. To assist us in staying on time, we will be using timing lights. Candidates, I direct your attention to this front row center, and I hope you can all see those lights. The light will go from green to yellow at 10 seconds. At 10 seconds, indicating that you must wrap up your answer or your comments as the case may be. The light will go to red at 0, and I will clap you down. I remind candidates that this is a forum, not a debate. What that means is that candidates respond to the questions asked and not to each other, except perhaps in context. There is no opportunity to have candidates rebut each other, nor engage with each other in back and forth debates or discussion. We are attempting to answer the questions posed by the voters and not score debating points for the cameras. Audience, voters, you have the opportunity to pose questions, but please do so in writing on the forms provided. Trudy, if you could hold up one of those forms. In the forms provided, they are available here, and our runners from the Youth Ambassadors of New Westminster will be picking them up. Please raise your hand when you have a question that needs to be picked up. One of our runners indicate yourselves at the back, please. One of our runners will pick up the question and give it to Trudy, who will be vetting the questions on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. We will try to get to as many questions as is possible. Audience members, please remember to write down your question in the form of a question and raise your hand for it to be collected by one of our runners. In addition, we ask the audience to refrain from cheering, applauding, or otherwise disrupting the candidates as they make their points or statements. It is important that we hear from the candidates this evening and that the candidates have the ability to make their own case. It will be up to each and every one of us on election day to decide who has made the better case. Please note that the close of nominations for candidates is Monday, September 30th, 2019. We do have all currently nominated candidates in attendance, but there may well be others nominated. In alphabetical order, to the candidates, we have Will Davis from the Liberal Party of Canada. Hanson Jim from the People's Party of Canada. Peter Julian from the New Democratic Party. Suzanne de Montagny from the Green Party of Canada. Neeraj Murarka from the Libertarian Party of Canada. And Megan Beck from the Conservative Party of Canada. And now we'll call on the candidates for their opening statements from the podium. Again, candidates, you have 3 minutes. The light will go yellow at 10 seconds and red at 0. First up is Suzanne de Montagny from the Green Party of Canada. Suzanne.
I was a teacher, mostly in the Vancouver School Board, for about 20 years, and I'm also the author of 5 novels. But I put that career on hold because I decided I had to run for office. You see, I was tired of watching as Canada change to a place I didn't recognize anymore. We used to be a nation where people could talk, discuss things, enjoy hearty political exchange, but suddenly there was fear. People were afraid to share their real concerns, and I realized we were losing our democracy. And then came Trump, who opened up the ugliest can of worms I'd ever seen. He was filled with hatred and contempt, with no regard for human beings. He was all about deporting Hispanics, even though they were contributing members to society. He called them murderers and rapists, and he hated Muslims and banned them from entering the U.S. And as most things go, unfortunately, his campaign of hatred traveled across our borders. And as a teacher of 20 years, one thing I know is that every child should have the same chance. Every family should have affordable housing and health care, and every student should have a post-secondary education available to them. And that's what Canada's about: equality, freedom, and compassion. The Green Party is neither left, neither right. We are centrist. We believe in open dialogue because that's how problems are solved. But the event that affected me most of all was when Trudeau bought a pipeline to please Alberta after he had announced that Canada would be an active member in the Paris Accord. He had said, "We're back." I had watched the Al Gore films back in 2005 and was so moved by them that when my father passed away and left me money in 2006, I invested in a Prius. Then later, an EV. But that was before the bad news of the IPCC came last year, announcing to the world that we had a very small window of time in which to switch to clean energy. I like to give the analogy of global warming in the following way. Imagine a cold winter's evening, and you're watching TV and you're just freezing to death. So you go and get a blanket out of the closet, and you tuck your feet in, and you tuck it underneath yourself, and you make sure that your shoulders and arms are in. And after a while, it starts getting a little warmer, so you take out your hands. After a while, it's your feet. And then finally, you're so sweaty, you flip the whole blanket off. But the problem is in global warming, you can't throw that blanket off, ever. What's keeping us from fixing this? Believe it or not, we have all the solutions. It's partisan politics, that's why. First past the post system does not work anymore, and we were cheated out of proportional representation. We need to collaborate across parties. We need to work together to stop climate change and to create a future for our kids. You've seen the global strikes. The kids have spoken. We all know who Greta Thunberg is. That child could lead the world is amazing, and that's why I'm here. I'm with Greta. I'm for the kids. It's time. What we're doing is not sustainable. There's no more room for increments. Canada is heating up twice as fast as the rest of the world. It's my country and your country and our planet. Let's get going.
Thank you very much. We now have Neeraj Murarka from the Libertarian Party of Canada. Neeraj.
Hi, I'm Neeraj Murarka, and I'm the Libertarian here. Just to clarify, we're not liberal, we're Libertarian. I ran into that a lot when I was getting nominations. So I'm going to start by saying I'm very interested in one thing, and I think that's the only thing that we should first care about, is liberty. I'm going to sometimes sound direct. I'm not a professional politician. I might speak the truth, and it often sounds bitter. I ask you to just bear with my approach. Leaders have to be courageous. They have to be willing to tell you what you don't want to hear. I'm going to be the only person here telling you that. I want to win, but I'm not going to win on the wrong standards. And that's really what leadership is. You should be looking for people that want to tell you what you don't want to hear. Now I'm going to go into my political side. You know, my fellow candidates, they're going to talk about solving problems with more funding. They're going to talk about giving out money. They're going to talk about building houses for everyone. I mean, I've been watching the debates. And these are all magic tricks. They're not going to explain how it's possible. They're not going to use sound economic principles based on science to explain how these things can be done. They're just going to make empty promises. And you can see that the same problems happen every 4 years. You know why? Because the problems that they're trying to solve aren't being solved the way they're offering their solutions. I'm talking about sound solutions, and I'm going to give you solutions that are not going to be easy to accept, but they're possible. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I was born in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and I've lived all over Canada. I spent some time in Quebec. Je parle français, si vous voulez me parler en français. I was in Quebec, I was in Ontario, I was in the Yukon, I lived in America. Maritimes, and of course I moved out here to British Columbia. I moved to Burnaby in my early teens. I graduated from Fairview Hills Secondary School, and eventually from Simon Fraser with a honors degree in computer science and mathematics. And I work as a software engineer, so I run a company with 8 engineers, and I've had experience of living in Canada and the United States, which is actually great, because you want someone who has experience. You want someone that hasn't just been living here in your backyard. They've gone elsewhere, they've seen what problems other people have. I've run businesses that have succeeded. I've also been in companies that have failed, and you know what? You gotta fail several times to succeed. You gotta know what doesn't work. Running a country is a lot like running a company. You gotta have budget, you gotta understand how finance works, you gotta understand the law, you gotta understand all these things. I've had all that experience. I'm a businessman, but I also know civics, and I'm also very interested in improving this country. I'm gonna talk real quick about my party, the Libertarian Party of Canada. We talk about the right and left, and some people like to say that we're best of both worlds, but you really gotta talk the talk and walk the walk. The right side loves to talk about fiscal conservatism, the left side likes to talk about social freedoms. We take both and we bring them together. That's really all we're interested in. So I'm going to personally make sure that we're balancing the best of both worlds, because equilibrium is important. And most parties, they take polarized approaches to the left and right. And that's not right. You need balance. It requires hard work. It requires effort. It requires my party. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Will Davis from the Liberal Party of Canada. Will.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having us. This is indeed important to democracy and important to have a place to share our thoughts and for you to get educated a bit more. A bit about myself. My name is Will Davis. I am running for the Liberal Party of Canada because I am a father of 5 children. I love the Canada that I live in, and I want to see that Canada continue to develop and grow the same way that I've grown up in it. And so I want to step up now in 2019, because to my mind, this election is equally, if not more important than 2015. It's time for us to continue to choose forward and move forward as a country. And so I have personally, not only do I collect children, I also have I've had a lot of experience in different fields. I grew up in Sherbrooke, Quebec, and there my first foray into my career was with youth. I was a youth advocate and a community organizer in Quebec for years, and then I moved out here into Burnaby in 1997. And I worked here in different capacities with not-for-profits and in volunteering. And I worked at CBC Television in both the French and English newsrooms as a reporter, and then later as a producer and a creator of content and programming. From that, I grew my own small business. So I owned a small business for over a decade and had a successful business in entertainment and marketing. And I also went back to not-for-profits. I've been an executive in not-for-profits and worked with different people in our community, including the men and women who serve and veterans, as well as youth and in the arts. Most recently, I worked in immigration and settlement with the Multicultural Helping House Society, supporting our new Canadians arriving here in Canada. It's my belief that this riding has an opportunity to move forward. This riding has an opportunity to put someone in government in Ottawa working for us, and I really appreciate that opportunity. And so I look forward to a healthy conversation tonight, and appreciate you all welcoming me here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Will. Next up is Megan Beck from the Conservative Party of Canada. Megan.
And I have to tilt this down after you're there. So as was mentioned, my name is Megan. I'm your federal Conservative candidate for the upcoming election. And I remember when I was telling my parents and my friends that I was going to put my name forward and try to run. And the question that I got more often than anything else was, why? And I think when you look at Twitter politics, when you look at the sound bites that we're seeing right now, that's a pretty good question to ask. There's a lot of hatred, there's a lot of vitriol, and not a lot of people want to be part of this space. But for me, what made it worth it, it started out when I was interning for an NGO that combats human trafficking. I was living in Montreal at the time. I was probably around 19 or 20, and I story after story of, more often than not, women whose lives looked so different than mine. And it broke my heart, and it made me really, really angry. And looking at that, I got to see firsthand the role that public office holders play in shining a light on injustice and raising it in the House of Commons, and oftentimes combating it and raising funds or allotting funds to combat it. Can't see that in there. And so for me, that kind of instilled a love of public policy, and it got me started on the road to politics. But ultimately, when you look at politics at a local level, it really is about community. Someone said to me that politics is quite simple, or at least being a politician is. It's about listening to people in your community. It's about hearing their stories. It's about hearing their dreams, their goals, their challenges, and it's about taking it back to Ottawa and fighting like hell on their behalf. And so I look at that, and being a part of this community, that's really easy. I think all of us can see the value in our community, the value in our neighbors, and I feel really lucky to get to call New Westminster, Burnaby, New West for me home. So when it comes to wanting to fight for our community in Parliament, I'm conservative simply because I believe that Conservatives have the best policy to help our community and everyone in our community get ahead and not just get by. And that simply means leaving more money in your pocket so that you can build the life you want, whatever that looks like. It also means that you can support the causes that are heavy on your heart, the way that human trafficking was really close to mine. I believe what they say, that a dollar in the hand of someone who earns it is better than the dollar in the hand of a politician who taxed it. Our leader has this saying that he goes to all the time, saying that the Liberals put their faith in government and Conservatives put their faith in people. And again, the more people I meet in our community, the more that rings true for me, because we have a remarkable community with remarkable people. And so I'm proud to be running in this election. I'm proud to be your Conservative candidate. And if I have the honor of being your MP, I will be proud to listen to your stories and fight enormously hard on your behalf.
For this segment, and to answer each question within a 90-second framework. Our first question is a question from our sponsor. And the question is, the federal government has, over the decades, implemented several programs to help home buyers, including the Home Buyers Plan, which lets qualifying home buyers each use up to $35,000 of their RSPs for a down payment on a home. What one brand new initiative would you and your party implement to make home ownership more affordable, especially for first-time buyers? I'll go alphabetical on this one. The first response is to you, Will.
Hello, there we go. Excuse me. So I think, first of all, thank you for the question. Sponsors, the first-time home buyers plan that was introduced recently by the Prime Minister and the Liberal Party of Canada is to support first-time home buyers with a Kickstarter up to $800,000 to support the first-time home buyer in purchasing their first home. So we see that this plan can work in this community. Certainly, that's well documented that we've introduced this to support the first-time home buyers. Has been announced, as I say, and we believe this will help with that first, saving first-time home buyers up to $300 a month on their mortgage. Is an important step towards getting them that opportunity to have their first home.
Thank you. And now to Hanson Jim. Hanson.
Thank you. What the People's Party will do is basically reform the tax system. We'll just simplify it to a two-tier tax bracket system. So if you're earning below $15,000, you pay no tax. Anywhere from between $15,000 to $100,000, you will pay 15% flat tax. And anything over $100,000 is a 25% flat tax. And that will help put more money into your pocket because it simplifies the tax system. It's already challenging enough as is to understand how the tax brackets work. And it actually is a drain on the government systems just to maintain that existing system as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to Peter. I think that's it.
There we go. Okay, thank you very much for the question. Yeah, I could.
Try that.
You may have to. I'll just take that. Thank you. Thanks very much. So we are in a crisis in affordable housing. Anybody in the community knows that. Each one of us knows somebody, family member, friend, a neighbor that is facing this crisis. I met this week a woman named Val. She, because of her pension, not being able to keep up with her rents, actually found herself on the street with her son, and her son had to watch over her as they slept on the street at night. This is not the first story I've heard about the absolute crisis that we are facing in our country. We've actually seen a reduction in the investments that need to go to affordable housing. So the plan that Jagmeet Singh has announced is 500,000 new housing units, affordable housing units, over the next 10 years. That addresses that chronic deficit that we have now in terms of affordable housing, cooperative housing, and social housing. In terms of home ownership, we are in favor of expanding the 30-year mortgage. We would double the home buyer's tax credit. But you asked, Scott, the issue of something new and innovative. What's innovative in the NDP program is co-ownership. The traditional mortgage doesn't necessarily work, particularly for millennials. So we would introduce the ability of millennials to get together and have the co-ownership of the home that they choose to buy. That's an innovative new approach, and it would make a difference in terms of housing affordability.
Thank you very much. Suzanne.
Okay, thank you. Well, the Green Party, as a Green Party member, we feel that safe, affordable housing is a human right. And so therefore, as Peter said, there's a lot of people living on the street. My son in university tells me that there are actually people living in the library. They don't have a home to go home to at night. And so anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to create a lot more, we're going to appoint a Minister of Housing to strengthen the national housing strategy. We're going to target 25,000 new and 15,000 rehabilitated units annually for the next 10 years. I'm not so worried about people buying their first home, I'm worried about people getting housing, period. Okay, then we're also going to increase the National Housing Co-Investment Fund by $750 million for new builds, and the Canada Housing Benefit by $750 million for rent assistance for 125,000 households. And hate to say it, but we're going to eliminate the first-time buyer grant.
Okay, thank you very much. And now to Neeraj.
So I'm going to go back to what I was saying. You know, if the problem's been around for a while and it's not been getting solved, and all I'm hearing is a convoluted, pardon my language, mess of different ways to solve this that don't directly solve the problem. The problem is very simple, and I can tell you why. I've been trying to buy a house. I'm a reasonable middle-class citizen of this country, and I can't afford to buy a house in the very town I grew up in. It's very simple. The price is too high. This is not about taxes. This is not about somebody in Ottawa promising to build me a house. They're not going to come out and build me a house. This is about the fact that I simply cannot afford to buy a house. So what has to be done? Well, let's go and look at microeconomics and macroeconomics. This is an economic problem. You've got a limited resource, which is our housing, which is not limited to people in this country. That's a fact. That resource is being priced out of their abilities. Why is that? I mean, if we're earning here and we're paying taxes here, we should be able to afford to buy the very limited resource that's available here, but it's not available. So something has to be done about that. And this is what it comes down to. It's not about tax cut. It's not about somebody building a house for you. It's about addressing that price, and it's about ensuring that this scarce resource, real estate, is available to Canadians to buy. What I'm going to do is to limit the ability for people to buy a house to Canadian citizens and Canadian PR card holders. This is what's done in foreign countries. I've spent time in Asia and Singapore. This is precisely what's done. We are one of the few countries that do not protect a national resource.
Thank you very much, Neeraj. And last but not least, to Megan.
Perfect. So we've been pretty clear that we will work with the provinces and municipalities to knock down regulatory barriers barriers that impede home construction, so that more homes can be built at a lower price. When you mentioned new policy goes, we said that we are going to launch an inquiry into money laundering in the real estate sector, and we're going to work with our industrial partners to root out corruption practices that inflate housing prices. We're also going to make federal surplus real estate available for development to increase the supply of housing.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question is around the business property tax. I'll read the question and then determine the order. Businesses pay an unfair amount of property taxes, and with the downloading of costs from the federal and provincial governments to municipalities, there is not much they can do. What is your solution? We will start with Suzanne.
Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Absolutely. Businesses pay an unfair amount of property taxes, and with the downloading of costs from the federal and provincial governments to municipalities, there is not much they, meaning businesses, can do. What is your solution?
Okay, so I see this problem all the time. I was reading actually in the paper a couple of weekends ago about how there's that business, it's a natural foods place on Columbia, and they're going to have to shut down because they simply can't afford the tax. It's ridiculous. And everywhere I go talking to people, that's what people tell me, too much tax, we need more money in our pockets. Okay, one of the big problems with Canada right now is we are being taxed to death. When there are all these Silicon Valley companies all over the place, like Netflix and Airbnb and Amazon, who are paying zero tax. So let's start charging them for tax, and then we won't have to pay so much.
Thank you very much. And now to Megan. Same question, Megan.
Well, I have to be from the outset, business taxes is not my area of expertise. But when it comes to taxes, we've been pretty clear that we're going to eliminate the carbon tax as a way of moving more money in your pocket for individuals. It will decrease the cost for businesses, and across the board we'll be lowering taxes to help not just businesses, but individuals get ahead as well.
And to Will.
Let's just start.
Will Davis?
Sorry, we shut it off every time.
Oh.
But we're going to leave it on from now on. Is that part of support?
Yeah, that's probably good.
Thank you for the question. So the government of Canada, the Liberal Party of Canada has just announced new support for small businesses. Having owned a small business for over 12 years, I know these problems are real. These are important. It impedes our opportunities as small business owners to grow a business and to continue to strive to grow into bigger businesses. This has been a very, very good time for the last 4 years. We've seen 1,100,000 new jobs created, and just this new announcement, we'll see new support for small businesses and with tax rates, including 50% reduction for all those businesses that are innovating in green energies and green solutions for the climate emergency.
Thank you very much. And now to Peter, same question.
I'm a proud member of the New Westminster Chamber of Commerce and a proud member of the Burnaby Board of Trade. And when we talk about business taxes at the local level, we have to look at the overall fiscal framework that's established by the federal government. As Suzanne mentioned, the web giants are getting away currently without paying taxes at all. And the Parliamentary Budgetary Officer produced a report just a few months ago that indicated that between $25 and $40 billion a year are going into offshore tax havens. That is money that should be part of our collective resources that we provide. And because municipalities only get 8 cents on the tax dollar, it means that the federal government not providing an adequate fiscal framework that hits both provinces and also municipalities and ultimately businesses. Our plan includes measures that would help businesses. For example, universal single-payer pharmacare would save small businesses in our community and across the country $6 billion annually. That's money that is currently going from small businesses into drug plans. Our Medicare, universal Medicare, provides an annual competitive advantage of about $3,000 per employee for each Canadian business compared to an American business. So when we talk about childcare, affordable housing, and pharmacare, we're actually talking about measures that help public, but also help businesses in this community and right across the country.
Thank you very much. And to Hanson.
Much like Megan, I definitely am not a tax expert by any means. I don't know of any specific policy that we have outside of reforming the corporate tax to make it a flat 10% rate. Beyond that, I really can't speak anymore to that. So, sorry.
Thank you. And to Neeraj.
So I'm up here looking at what the dictionary definition of the word theft is. It's the taking, I'm on Wikipedia right now, it's the taking of another person's property or services without that person's permission or consent with the intent to deprive the rightful owner of it. So I'm going to make a cliched statement that all my libertarians make and scares people away. Taxation is theft, plain and simple. I am absolutely against taxation, and my long-term perspective is to eliminate it. It doesn't mean I want to make your life suck. It doesn't mean I want to get rid of your social programs. It doesn't mean I want anything bad. Taxation is taking money from you and giving it to power these large corporations, both local, multinational, so that they can take advantage of the country, whether it's pollution or real estate, whatever it is. One of my fellow candidates here mentioned multinational companies like Google and Netflix. Yeah, they're taking advantage of it. How do you think they're doing that? They've got special interest groups and they've got politicians in their pockets. The Libertarians are going to prohibit any sort of money coming from these special interest groups. It's illegal. You shouldn't be taking money from them. It's bribery. What we want to do is we want to make sure that taxation is eventually eliminated. It's not going to happen overnight. That's not practical. We are going to reduce it, and we're going to make sure that the corporations, regardless of who they are friends with, are going to be paying their fair share. Your tax as a small business will go down, and eventually we will eliminate it. You can come and talk to me afterwards if you want to know how.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question is directed initially to Megan Beck of the Conservative Party of Canada, but I will address it to all of the other candidates. So Megan, you will have the first shot at this. I have heard some details on the issue of climate action plan from the Greens, the Liberals, and the New Democratic Party. Do the Conservatives have a more detailed climate action plan than has previously been announced?
That is a very important question. So we have released our climate policy right now. We've said that it relies on 3 core principles. First and foremost, it's green technology, not taxes. The second pillar would be a cleaner and greener natural environment. And the third policy would be taking the climate change fight global. So we've been pretty clear that we want to take the Canadian technologies that we have here. We have some of the best technologies in the world for fighting climate change, for reducing carbon emissions, and we want to make sure that other jurisdictions have access to those as well. Many of you know that Canada accounts for 2% of global emissions, and so when we come to addressing climate change, when it comes to taking care of our environment, which I think I share the passion of many of you in this room, and saying that that's quite important to me, I think that's important to you guys, that's important to future generations of Canadians. And so in doing that, we want to make sure that Canada is a leader on the world stage. So we will be exporting Canadian technology so that other jurisdictions have access to that as well. We've also said that we want Canada to be energy independent by 2030. So Canada has some of the highest environmental standards in the world. We also have some of the highest human rights standards in the world. So it doesn't really make sense for us to be importing oil from Venezuela, Iran, Nigeria, and other places that don't have nearly as high standards as us when we have enough oil to be self-sufficient. So we'll be working towards energy independence by 2030. We'll also be creating a clean energy corridor so that, I think I'm out of time.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll turn this over to Peter now.
Well, the reality is climate change is costing our economy $5 billion a year already. That's estimated to climb over the next couple of decades to $50 billion a year. We're all aware of the impacts of climate change. So the idea that the Liberal government has brought forward to ram through the Trans Mountain Pipeline makes no sense whatsoever. It is a boondoggle, $17 billion, and climbing for something that ultimately leads to a net job loss in British Columbia, let alone the threat to our fisheries and our tourism industries. It is, and I say this as a former oil refinery worker, a colossal waste of money. Putting that money into clean energy transition, particularly given that even in the United States we're seeing an increased interest and market for clean energy sources out of American states and American municipalities, makes a great deal more sense. And that is where we would put the money in terms of a climate action plan. We would not build Trans Mountain. We would instead put it into clean energy. And ultimately, that results, according to the building trades, 300,000 jobs, new jobs over the first 5 years, and over the course of the next 30 years, these kinds of investments lead to 4 million jobs. That's why other jurisdictions are making this transition, because they can guarantee future prosperity.
Thank you very much. We'll turn that over to Neeraj now. Neeraj.
Hi. So I run into a lot of people that are climate deniers, and that's not politically correct right now. I'm not a climate warming denier at all. In fact, I'm going to approach this from the standpoint of we're going to make two big assumptions. We're going to assume the planet is warming up. We're also going to assume it's warming up because of human beings. So what are we going to do about it? Well, first of all, 95% of the emissions that are coming into the planet's atmosphere are not coming from us. They're coming from outside of Canada. That's a reality. One of my colleagues here just mentioned that. But let me furthermore talk about what we can do as Canada. We don't have control over other countries. Now, for the last 50 years, since the early 70s, when the whole environmental movement started, people have been talking about climate change, and it's been increasingly becoming a bigger issue. This year, it's a bigger issue than I've ever seen it. And nothing changes. It's always the same thing. There's no fixes. It's just posturing, and it's just more stuff to talk about every election to win votes. I'm interested in solutions. I'm not interested in just making promises that were heard over and over again. What I'm going to do when I'm an MP for you is I'm going to remove all protections for corporations from being sued. Do you know why I can't go into your house and steal something or do something or damage your lawn? Because I can be sued. These corporations cannot be sued. The Libertarian Party is going to make it possible for you to punish industry by taking them to court and using common law against them to prevent any sort of environmental damage.
Thank you very much. We'll turn it over to Hanson now.
All right, the People's Party's standpoint really is that we're not completely convinced that it is man-made climate change. We do admit that the climate changes. That's just been a constant since the beginning of time. So our approach to this is really we won't do anything. We're going to let the provinces determine how they want to tackle climate change, but at the same time, we want the private sector to really take over and tackle the challenge itself, because we believe they are going to be more efficient in terms of implementing strategies. They will have the ingenuity behind it as well, whereas show me a government program where government intervention really has been efficient, plain and simple.
Thank you very much. And to Will.
The Liberal Party of Canada has managed to grow the economy and will continue to grow the economy. And in doing so, we need to consider our union. We need to consider our neighbors in Alberta. And so we have to work with Alberta and the folks in the oil industry to grow and develop towards a greener economy, a greener infrastructure fast. We are all for that, 100%. And so continuing to lead Alberta in diversifying and growing their opportunities is important. But we can't flip a switch and turn this overnight. So the Liberal Party of Canada will continue to support the 50% reduction in taxes for green companies innovating with a ban on plastics by 2021, with net zero by 2050, and also investing billions of dollars in continuing to diversify this economy and support our change towards a green economy and a green way of living as soon as possible.
And last but not least, to Suzanne.
And this is right down my alley. Hate to say it, folks, but Canada's heating up twice as fast as anywhere else in the world. And we're not going to make it on anybody else's plan to take care of global warming. Okay, so this pipeline, no pipeline. That's 10 to $13 billion. We're going to take that. We're also going to take the $3.4 billion that we normally put into gas subsidies, oil and gas subsidies, and we're going to build all kinds of solar farms, wind farms, geothermal energy, and tidal energy as well. We're also going to complete the east-west grid. Did you know that our energy grid only goes up to East Manitoba and then stops? And then there's another one that starts in West Ontario, and then it goes on. We're going to connect the whole thing. We're going to upgrade. And we're also going to take every single building and we're going to retrofit it so that it does not release heat and gas into our environment. Our particular house, I hate to say it, but we've got gas, and when we walk on the side of the house, I can sometimes smell gas. That's not good. Anyways, we take it very, very seriously, and we are going to eliminate greenhouse gases by 60% by 2030, and that we will have net zero energy by 2050. So, sorry folks, but it's just way too serious. No one's going to make it, only we will.
Thank you very much, candidates. Our next question is addressed to all candidates, and it's regarding the opioid crisis. If elected, what will you do to scale up harm reduction services, as well as support the growing demands to decriminalize people who possess controlled substances for their own personal use? I'll direct that first to Hanson Jen. Hanson.
People's Party really doesn't have anything specific about this right now, but the safe injection sites, I think, is doing more harm than good, because at what point are you enabling a problem? And rather than helping, it's done out of good heart, but there's a point when you're actually enabling the issue and you're actually doing more harm than good. So, this is a challenging one. It's a social program that certainly needs to be investigated and really needs to be looked at. I really don't want to say something on turn here because I don't really know much about the opioid crisis, to be honest. Sorry.
Thank you. Will.
The opioid crisis has been a shameful episode, and the large pharmaceuticals have certainly are being held to account, and as they should be. The opportunity now is to, as was done with decriminalization, legalization of marijuana, the use of these types of drugs needs to be put in the hands of people that can regulate and be supported. And so we need to continue to develop a strategy. The government of the Libertarian Party of Canada has announced a kickstart to the pharmacare plan of $6 billion to support to work with the provinces and develop a new plan that will support each of the provinces with this kickstart of $6 billion. And so these plans need to continue to empower locally and in the community the opportunity to work with individuals around these issues.
Thank you very much. Megan.
I can't find my notes on this particular one, but I will say from the outset, when it comes to addiction and that sort of thing, I think it's very clear that we have to approach this from a mindset of compassion. So when it comes to legalizing drugs, we've said very clearly that we won't recriminalize cannabis. When it comes to legalizing other substances, we're not moving that way right now as a party. But when you look at our community, I think we lost 24 people last year. New West, who passed away due to overdose. So we're going to be working from a holistic perspective, looking at not just safe injection sites, but also looking at rehabilitation and helping people and supporting people in rehabilitation as part of the process. But when we look at harder drugs as well, one of the things that we need to address is gangs, because drug trafficking is a mean way of making money that gangs make money. And so we've been pretty clear that part of our strategy for a safer Canada will be equipping police forces with the resources that they need to crack down on gangs in Canada, to arrest known gang members, and to introduce harsher sentences for people that are convicted of gang crimes, and that will go a long way in also combating the drug crisis that we are currently facing.
And to Neeraj.
So folks, this isn't really about just opioids. This is about drugs in general. Any sort of drugs that are being consumed, whether it's marijuana, alcohol, cigarettes, anything, these are all victimless crimes. In fact, if there's any drug that's not a victimless crime, it's the use of alcohol. I drive a car, I drink, I hit someone, there's a victim. Yet, all these other drugs are actually considered illegal to own and possess and to sell. So my party is not interested in mistreating these drug problems. They're problems, but they're not criminal problems, they're medical problems. And until we start accepting that, we're not going to fix anything. These are all just, the other solutions I'm hearing are not real solutions. You're just dealing with a problem that's not being solved properly. What we're going to do is we're going to decriminalize drugs, but we're going to treat them like medical conditions, because that's exactly what addiction is. It's a medical condition. If you look at what happened in Portugal in the 80s, they decriminalized drugs and their overdose levels dropped dramatically by 90%. This is just simple logic and rationality here. And this is we're the party that has the courage to tell you something that you may not necessarily want to accept. Decriminalizing these drugs and giving people medical assistance so that if they have an addiction, they can deal with it is the right way to go. And furthermore, educating them and preventing them from even going into that direction with drugs is the way to do it. Proactive prevention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to Suzanne.
Okay, I did a speech actually on Recovery Day in New Westminster, and I told a story about my cousin's son. And he was this like totally normal guy who had a job, who had kids, he was very well liked. But
here in British Columbia, it was proof that it's a complicated issue. And so how to go about making that happen is a very, it will prove to be a very challenging debate and discussion. But I can say that, of course, this was part of the platform in 2015, but of course, there was also much progress from our Liberal government through the last 4 years, including raising 900,000 people out of poverty, including 300,000 children, including the National Housing Strategy and the Green Plan, and many, many other programs. So this is something that can be brought back to committee, brought back to members of Parliament and worked through. But again, as we saw in the provincial question, it was a very complicated one and difficult to get folks to wrap their minds around.
Thank you. And Peter.
It's not complicated at all. We all recall in 2015, Mr. Trudeau solemnly promised that this would be the last election that was conducted by first past the post. And it is one of the most egregious of the broken promises. The reality is people voted on that basis. They voted Mr. Trudeau into government, and then he promptly reneged because he didn't see it as being in his political party's interest. What we need is a proportional representation system because we need to make sure that every vote counts. We can't go into situations where members of Parliament are elected sometimes with as little as 30 or 35% of the mandate from the people in their riding. And so proportional representation makes a great deal of sense. It also means that parties work together to hopefully for the collective well-being. I am a strong advocate for proportional representation. So is my party, so is my leader, Jagmeet Singh, and we will be pushing in the next Parliament, either as government or having the balance of power to make sure that we get the proportional representation system that I believe most Canadians want to see.
Thank you. And Megan.
Well, on this topic, we've been clear that we won't pursue electoral reform without a referendum and without a clear mandate from Canadians to pursue it. But I think what's clear in this instance is that part of the reason we're having a conversation about our democracy and the way it's gone about is because there's a breakdown in trust. I think there's a breakdown in trust between people and all levels of federal government. And when we have a prime minister in power who is consistently completely broken his promises to Canadians, that certainly doesn't help the issue. So I guess my point to you guys here now, I could go on with talking about the broken promises of Trudeau, but I think more than anything else, that if I have the honor of being your MP, just know that my door will be open to you. It's your stories that will matter, and it's your voice that will be amplified.
Thank you. The next question is a three-part question. Fairly simple, I think, in some ways, in other ways not. That's on foreign policy, foreign influence. First part, will you stop arms sales to Saudi Arabia? Second, will there be a stop on foreign ownership of real estate? And third, will you stop birthing tourism? You can answer one, two, or all three of those at your choice. First, over to Peter. Questions again were arms sales, Saudi Arabia. Second, foreign ownership of real estate. Third, birthing tourism.
Thank you very much. On arms sales to Saudi Arabia, I've raised this in the House of Commons. So has my caucus. So has my leader. The reality is those arms sales to Saudi Arabia have been involved, embroiled in the awful, terrible, violent civil war in Yemen. We've seen the images of the children that have died, and for Canada to continue to ship arms overseas to Saudi Arabia in the midst of that conflict and that terrible violence makes no sense at all. It certainly does not keep with fundamental Canadian values that we have, that we share, peace and human rights. We would stop those arms sales. On foreign ownership, we have said that the foreign buyers tax that has been put into place in British Columbia should be extended right across the country to make sure that there is no incentive for offshore money, whether that, regardless of which country it comes from, to come and inflate our housing market. And so that extension has had an impact, a positive impact in British Columbia. Extending it across the country would make a great deal of sense as well. As far as birthing tourism is concerned, the idea that somebody is a citizen and that citizen has obligations as well, for example, the obligation to pay taxes in Canada, is something that makes a great deal of sense. That when you are a Canadian citizen, you have an obligation to our collective well-being and to ensure, of course, that we're all working together with the resources.
Thank you very much. I know it's a long question, but Neeraj?
Yes, hi. So I'll answer the last two questions. I've already commented on foreign ownership. My standpoint is to completely ban ownership of housing, real estate, any kind of industrial property, any real estate whatsoever in Canada by any entity, whether it's a person or it's a shell company that's hiding people that are not citizens of this country or PR cards. Real estate is a limited, scarce resource, and it's something we need to protect for Canadians. So that I'm not interested in any sort of foreign buyer's tax. That's just actually taking money and transferring it to the government. That money's not going to come back to you. You're not going to get assistance to buy those homes that are priced out of your range. It goes back to my very first question. In terms of the birthing tourism, I'm against it. It's actually an exploitation of our country. And again, if you look at other countries, they don't allow it. If you go to a lot of other countries and you happen to be in that situation, you won't get automatic benefits in that country. So I'm against that, and I think that we've got to protect, again, our country. I'm a libertarian, but I'm a libertarian for you. I'm here to protect this country for the people that I work for, the citizens. I'm not here to ensure the interests of foreigners that want to come here and, take advantage of this country. Thank you.
Thank you. And to Suzanne.
Okay, regarding the arms sales to Saudi Arabia, definitely going to stop that. And not only that, we're also not going to buy their oil anymore, and they'll just use the oil and gas in Canada until we finish the transition. Okay, regarding foreign ownership, I'm all for taxing, and what I want to know is who are these real estate agents who are letting people buy houses with great big shopping bags full of cash and buy expensive cars with big shopping bags full of cash? So I think we have to figure out a little bit more what's happening with this money laundering so that we can avoid foreign ownership. Regarding birthing tourism, well, it seems to me there's some sort of racket going on, not only for birthing tourism, but there's also people who are allowing people to stay in their country, pretending that they're staying in Canada so that they can get their landed immigrant status, and I think that that has to be stopped as well.
Thank you. And to Megan.
Well, when it comes to arms sales, we've been pretty clear that we're always going to stand with those who value freedom, justice, and human rights. Human rights will always be something that is the forefront of the minds of Canadians. When it comes to foreign buyers and foreign ownership, we are going to launch inquiry into money laundering, specifically in BC. That's something that's been huge. It's something that the federal government has promised to assist the provinces and municipalities in combating. The Liberal government has completely failed and completely dropped the ball. They haven't shown up. They haven't brought any assistance in that matter, so we're going to do that. And when it comes to coming to Canada to give birth, we've consistently said that when it comes to immigration, our policy will always be to prioritize immigration that is fair, orderly, and compassionate.
And to Will.
In terms of Saudi Arabia, the Saudis need to be held to account in terms of their human rights records and the way that they're treating the people and what's happening there. And Minister Freeland has made great efforts to work on that file. In terms of the foreign sales of 1%, we've just recently announced that there will be the introduction of the same type of 1% foreign sales tax that works so well here in British Columbia. That's a promise with 4 more years that will be implemented. And also, investigation and crackdown on just this type of criminality and money laundering and ne'er-do-wells infiltrating our economy and our communities. So this needs to stop, and it needs to be enforced. There needs to be some enforcement of these people, and it needs to be put in check. Finally, the issue around I worked in immigration and settlement most recently with the Multicultural Helping House, and this is a very complicated issue, and at the same time it's not. I think if someone has a child in Canada, as we live today, they will become members of our country, and they will be paying taxes and contribute to our country's economy. And time's up.
Thank you. And to Hanson.
All right, we'll start with birth tourism. We will make it illegal. It's an easy problem to solve. Actually, the UK did it by making it so that one parent has to be a UK citizen for the child to actually get citizenship. So it's an easy problem to solve. I don't know what the challenge is right now. So, firearm sales to Saudi Arabia, I don't know the specifics. However, our foreign policy really is more of a Canada focus, where we're interested in protecting our security and prosperity of Canadians. So if that is going to potentially compromise our sovereignty, then absolutely we will be stopping sales to Saudi Arabia. When it comes to foreign ownership, this is a complex issue. It does touch on money laundering. There are potential loopholes in laws because some of these properties are being purchased through corporations. So this is a bigger issue than just a private purchaser who lives out of the country. This definitely needs further investigation and to see how the big picture plays into how people are acquiring properties in Canada as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, candidates. If elected, what would you do to ensure all Canadians have access to the health care that they need? And we'll start with Will.
So the Liberal Party, first of all, what I do personally, we need to continue to develop our services in home and in our community here in New Westminster and in our riding. And the federal Liberal Party has introduced a pharmacare plan that would work with the with the provinces to kickstart the development of pharmacare nationally. And of course, that includes more money to support the further development of our healthcare system and plan. That includes support for seniors and also for young people with in-home services and more outreach, more support for people in their community, in their homes. And so that's the crux of the support will go not only to the youth and the seniors, but also to young families and those in the generation squeeze, those in the middle, and finding some healthcare support for those folks.
And to Megan.
So we have released our health and social program guarantee. So we're going to increase funding to each of those programs by 3% year over year. So we're going to keep the funding model the way it is right now, pretty much. But when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to the essential services that we rely on, the biggest threat to them right now is actually the Liberals' reckless spending. Right now, you look at how much they've plunged us into debt, how deeply they plunged us into debt, and their deficit spending, and inevitably that means that the Liberals are either going to have to hike our taxes or they're going to have to cut programs and services. So one of the main things that we can do to protect healthcare and to protect the essential services that our families rely on is to get our spending under control.
And to Peter.
Well, the NDP, of course, is the party of Canadian healthcare. Tommy Douglas, our founding leader, was the originator of our universal Medicare system, and nobody wants to go back to the days when you had to bring a credit card to go to the hospital or visit the doctor. What we are proposing now is significant expansions of our healthcare system. What that means is universal single-payer pharmacare, not just throwing a little bit of money so that some people get the benefit, but rather ensuring that in our pharmacare system, everybody has the ability to take the medication that their doctors prescribe. And Jagmeet Singh has also announced a landmark dental plan for basic dental care for families earning less than $100,000 a year. That's 4.3 million Canadians who currently do not have access to dental care. And I meet those constituents, and they suffer. Emergency room physicians tell us that often dental emergencies are treated in the emergency rooms. It costs us about $150 million a year just to treat those emergency cases. But for $855 million, we get dental care for families earning less than a six-figure revenue. So what we need is that expansion. It's also a competitive advantage for businesses, $3,000 per employee for Medicare, and a $6 billion competitive advantage for our businesses with pharmacare.
And to Neeraj.
Thank you. Healthcare is, in my opinion, the number one thing that politicians use to justify increasing your taxes and taking more money from you. It's the number one thing, and it irritates me because healthcare is not as expensive as we all think. As Canadians living north of the United States, we keep looking south and thinking, oh my God, what if we go there? What if our healthcare system's like that? No, we can't have that. And we justify this public healthcare system that simply doesn't work. I have had family, I have had friends that had to deal with this so-called healthcare system, and they end up waiting months for a specialist. They've already paid their taxes. They don't have any spare money left in their pocket to actually go and get private healthcare. They've already prepaid for this healthcare, yet it's not available to them because they're on a wait list. So what is this? You just keep waiting for something you've prepaid for and then you die? This isn't acceptable. You have to have a system in place where either you get what you need when you need it, or let people go and get private healthcare. So my mandate is to bring privatization of healthcare in. There will still be a public tier, but at the end of the day, we have to cut people's taxes so that they have money left in their pocket and they have a choice. It's about giving people choices so that if you have someone in your family, if you're sick or anyone's sick, you can have those choices and you can choose to get treatment wherever and however you want. Thank you.
Thank you. And to Hanson.
All right. So Canada is the only OECD country that actually has a monopoly government-wise on healthcare, interestingly enough. And what we want to do is actually change the system so that it's a blend of public and private system, so that you can have the best of both worlds. So really, throwing more money in at the problem isn't the fix. Healthcare is a provincial jurisdiction. We want to respect that. So with the current health transfer that we give as the federal government, we would actually replace that program by forfeiting the GST collected, which is approximately 40 billion as well, and give the equal shares of tax credits to provinces so they can start addressing and be held accountable for the healthcare systems that is actually gone wayside. Yeah, this way it's the whole intent is to give the provinces more incentive to become more innovative with the programs that they come up with to decrease wait times and become more efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. And Suzanne?
Okay, it's kind of interesting because I was having a conversation with my campaign manager on the way here, and she was saying how her husband, who's a doctor, gets up at 7 o'clock in the morning and comes home at about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And I said, yeah, that's the problem. That's why we keep losing our doctors to the States. We have a shortage of doctors here in Canada because, number one, we don't pay them enough, and number two, they just have way too long hours because there's a shortage of doctors. It's like this loop that goes around and around and around. So by taxing all these large corporations and we're hiding money in offshore accounts, and also by going after the Silicon Valley companies like Amazon, etc., that'll create a great deal more money so that we can create, number one, we can have more doctors, pay them better, and then we can also have pharmacare for everybody, free dental care for low-income Canadians, and we'll also expand our mental health and rehabilitation services so that there's a reduction in wait time for people who are suffering from mental health problems. Anyways, that's about it.
Thank you all, candidates. The next question is regarding campaign finances. Excuse me. Where do you receive financial and/or in-kind support for your campaign? Or put perhaps a little bit less politely, once elected, to whom are you beholden? We will start with Hanson.
Plain and simple, the reason why I got into politics and decided to run is because I felt that the government wasn't accountable to the people. So my understanding is that if elected, I'm responsible to you. And the whole point isn't to play games, politic, lie in front of you. I want to at least address your concerns. Maybe it's a utopia I'm shooting for here, but yeah, effectively, I would be accountable to you. Plain and simple.
Thank you. To Peter.
Well, of course, I'm accountable to the constituents of New Westminster Burnaby, and that's why we have such a good track record digging deep and working hard on behalf of constituents who come to our office from a wide variety of backgrounds, but who need help and assistance with federal government's programs and services, and often even consumer services that we intervene to make sure that they get the money that's due them from companies that should be paying them. We do that, and we can do that because we believe in our democratic system, and I support completely the Electoral Financing Act that we have now. Businesses, unions cannot contribute to any of our candidates or any federal political party. That is a great improvement on the system compared to the United States. And of course, the new BC NDP government has brought in similar legislation now, ending the Wild West of campaign financing. So I think you can all be assured that all the people on this stage will be receiving money in small contributions from all of you who are the public and who are constituents. And that's because of that major shift that avoids any corporate or any union donations into our federal election system.
Thank you. And to Neeraj.
Thank you. So, Mike, I started getting signatures about 2 weeks ago. I didn't have the money to hire a team of volunteers to go around and get the 100+ signatures I need. I got my friends to help me, and I lost 2 weekends doing it. It's tough, and the fact of the matter is, it's unfair. I mean, I think that the root, if you really want to think about the root of a lot of our political problems, is we don't have any competition. If you actually think that we have 3 or 4 big parties in Ottawa, we don't. We have one party. Different They're wearing a different hat, but they're all singing the same song, and there is no competition. You don't have the smaller parties like the LPOC or the PPC there, because we're not getting invited to the debates, and we don't get the big money. I can't afford to put these big signs next to the highway. I can't afford to hire a team of people going door to door. I've got 3 or 4 candidates in my party that had to not participate in this election because they can't afford to do all the things that the big party guys are doing. And that's not competitive, folks. I mean, if you want to have the same people running every time and you don't want competition, that's not going to improve things. You have to have competition. And that's what I'm about. I'm about making sure that I'm not going to take money from big interests. So if you're a company sitting here and you want to come and give me $1 million for my campaign, I don't want it. I'm not interested. I really want people to work hard and represent the people, and you're not allowed to take money. It really comes down to who do you want your politicians to be working for, you or some big company. I want to work for you.
Thank you. And Suzanne, please.
Okay, so the good news is, the new rules are that normally the maximum amount that anybody can contribute is $1,600 to one party. So that $1,600 cannot come from any corporation or any business. It has to come from a private person. And so I'm not beholden to anyone. I'm not even beholden to my husband. We actually never voted the same before, and this year he's voting for me. Anyways, as to who I'm working for, I'm working for you. The job of an MP is to be a servant to the people that he or she is working for. That is you.
And to Will.
Yeah, that is correct. The Electoral Financing Act has changed the way we support, financially support parties in this country, and so any one individual can give up to $1,600. I know I have. Sorry, I didn't give it to you. I kept it for my own race, but But at the end of the day, everyone up on the stage is beholden to the constituents, the people of their right. And every one of us have the same passion to serve in our community. I am very excited by this opportunity. I will serve my passion for this because it is so exciting. And so that is serving my own passion and serving the constituents. And of course, as my colleague here, my friend said, my wife is a rock star and is home with 5 kids on many nights. And you don't need volunteers, you get volunteers. And volunteers sign up for parties and support people and platforms. And so that's the goodness of this Electoral Funding Act, is that this means you have to get people at the grassroots, you have to get people buying in, and they support, and the cap on the amount that they give doesn't mean they're buying anything from you. All they're doing is, when they give you that $1,600, it comes with a lot of phone banking, door knocking, and helping out. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question. Oh, I'm sorry. Of course I do, Megan.
Now I know Peter feels like
Equal opportunity.
Well, I almost don't need to, because everyone else up here has done a really good job of explaining that there are maximum amounts that individuals can contribute, unions can contribute, businesses can contribute. But as Will has noted, we're actually quite lucky in Canada that there are those limits, because it means that there's no substitute for door knocking. There's no substitute for meeting people one-on-one. There's no substitute for engaging in debates like this. And so it means that there are less special interests in Canadian politics as opposed to the American system. And I think it's a misconception. A lot of times people think that our campaign managers or our political operatives are getting, a couple $100,000 each time they run. That's not true. For me, this meant taking a leave from work. I mean, it was just kind of a labor of love to be a part of this process. And I think for many of the people on this stage, it's the same way. So simply put, we're here for you. We're here because we care about our community. We want to listen to your stories. And the best way for our campaign to do it has been through door knocking, because it's cheap. We've also decided to share an office with the Jay Shin campaign, because it'll save us a couple $1,000. And so measures like that, I'm putting a plug in for our fiscal conservative ways. And the same way that we have scarce resources in the campaign and we're spending it responsibly, we'll also do that in government.
Thank you very much, candidates. The next question is on gun control and gun violence. How will you and your party reduce gun violence violence, while at the same time protecting sports shooting, hunting, and sports ownership of firearms. First to Suzanne.
My son's so good and laugh at me because he's always trying to explain all the different guns to me, and I'm always like, I don't want to hear about it, I hate guns. Well, okay, so the truth of the matter is what we're going to be doing is there will be no handguns or whatever the other kind was that my son was telling me about. I think it was some kind of, what's it called? AR-15s, yes, those kind of guns will be allowed in the city. However, you will be allowed to go hunting with guns, and you will also be allowed to go and do sports with guns.
Okay, thank you. And to Will.
The Liberal Party of Canada just announced, the Prime Minister announced the ban, if given 4 more years, the ban, total ban on military-style automatic weapons. Of course, we've seen these weapons infiltrate our lives, and often at the expense of innocent people who have been victims of these weapons that on the streets in the wrong hands makes absolutely no sense. Also, there's a proposal on the table to empower cities and local communities to put restrictions and bans on handguns and these weapons. And so, at the same time, I had a very nice conversation with a guy named Gary at the office, the campaign office, and he's an avid gun enthusiast. And he's fearful that he's going to have his guns taken away and not have the opportunity to go and shoot targets and shoot in ranges and in private clubs or in specific places. When I was a kid, we had at our camp, our Christian camp, the instructor was an Olympian, and he came, and we all as children were given responsible use of guns. That still needs to continue, and this proposal doesn't mean that folks that are using it for sport and in good faith will have their guns removed.
Thank you. And to Hanson.
All right. So, addressing firearm violence really needs to be tackled at the crime level. Right now, all the proposed gun bans
More when it comes to climate. So we need to move forward. And with the Green Party plan, we can quickly change to sustainable energy, create 4 million jobs, clean up our country, and provide affordable housing for everyone. The Green Party has the only plan that will allow us to reach the Paris target of no more than 1.5 degrees since pre-industrial times by 2050, a plan that has been entirely costed by the Parliamentary Budget Office. We don't intend to leave anyone behind. We are Canada, after all. Through a just transition, we can rehire all those oil and gas workers whose skills are quite transferable to clean jobs, thus creating a boom in our economy. Please don't vote strategically this time. It'll just be the same bunch of garbage as it usually is. This time is to vote on science. We need to move into the 22nd century and fast. Thank you.
And to Neeraj from the Libertarian Party of Canada.
Thank you. So, if I'm elected, I'm not going to be here to give you free money out of thin air. I don't have a laser printer in my basement, and unlike a lot of these candidates and parties that are talking about, just spending billions of dollars, where's that money going to come from? It has to come from somewhere. It's ultimately going to come back from you. I'm not going to build your house out of thin air. It takes work. It takes resources. And I'm not going to create jobs out of thin air. Jobs come about as a result of a vibrant economy. You have to make the economy work first. And I'm not forcibly going to take money from one person and give it to another person. That's not right either. My job here, if I represent you as an MP in Ottawa, is to give every person here an equal opportunity to earn that money. It's about having the opportunity to earn that money. It's about having the opportunity to build that house. It's about having the equal opportunity to find that job. It's not about just having an equal right to getting that house. People have to work for things. They don't come for free. My job here is to protect people's right to work for that and earn whatever it is that they want in their life. I'm interested in protecting people from each other, to have laws, to have legislative and common laws not to protect you from yourself. If somebody wants to go and smoke pot, let them smoke pot. It's a victimless crime. I'd like to ask you this election to look at the person who has the experience to run a country. I've run several businesses. I know business is not the same as running a country, but there's a lot of parallels, and I have experience knowing what to do and what not to do. You want someone who knows what works and doesn't work. You want someone who's not afraid to lose. I'm here today at this debate, and I'm telling you exactly what I believe in. I'm not telling you what you want to hear. I'd love to win, but that doesn't have to happen. I have an open attitude if I do get elected to office. I want to keep an open phone number, I want to have an open website, and I don't want any gatekeepers. You want to call me, give me a call. So, in closing, I ask you to think about liberty, think about yourself, vote for me, vote for liberty, Libertarian. Thank you.
Next up is Bill Davis.
Thank you, and thank everyone for being here. It's been a pleasure, and those questions were fantastic and very difficult. I will say this, I am proud to be here. I am proud to be a father of 5. I am proud to have a toolkit full of different experiences, including small business, work in the community and with new Canadians and youth, and also as a broadcaster with CBC in French and in English. I'm happy now to go and continue to knock on doors and talk to our people and our neighbors in this community. And I want to say that we have to remember that these last 4 years we've created 1.1 million new jobs. There has been support for our veterans, a national housing program, our national housing plan, support for early learners and young families, also tax-free credits for children, which made a huge difference in our lives. Wendy's a kindergarten teacher. I'm an executive in not-for-profits. That was a massive support for us. And you know, I will say that this world has turned to populism and conservatism to the extreme, and we have to be careful of this vote. We've seen Doug Ford, for example, get voted in Ontario, and we need not go down that path. That's where we can't afford to go. In this country has a $690 billion debt. 70% of that was created under Harper governments and Mulroney governments. So consider this, we've got 1.1 million new jobs, we've got an economy that's booming, and we need to bring some of that back into this riding. This riding needs to see some of that prosperity go to work for all of us. New plans for infrastructure, even Premier Horgan has commended the Prime Minister and the Liberal Party on its plans for infrastructure and for public transit. So when you go to vote on the 21st, please consider someone who could be a progressive leader and someone who could fight for you in Ottawa and not just fight in Ottawa and go make a difference for all of us in our lives. Thank you very much.
Next up is Megan Beck.
Well, I guess in closing, part of my responsibility in running for the Conservatives is convincing you that it's time for change. You guys know we've had an NDP member of Parliament here for about 15 years, and by all accounts, a great guy who's done a good job. I would put forward the idea, though, that it's time for our community to have a seat at the table. In the 15 years that we've had an NDP MP, he's put forward 46 private members' bills or potential laws, to use non-technical language, and zero of them have passed. So it's time for our community to have a seat at the table, and the best and most effective way for that to happen is to elect a member of Parliament who will be part of a governing party. I think Conservatives are the best party to be setting our country back on track. I think when you look at 4 years of Liberal failures, when you look at their reckless spending, when you look at Justin Trudeau's broken promises, when you look at the ways that he has embarrassed us at home and on the world stage, I think it's pretty obvious that we need a new Prime Minister. And I think here it's pretty obvious that we need a seat at the table who can fight for us, not just in the House of Commons, but also in caucus meetings. And I'd like to be the one that's fighting for you. So on October 21st, I'm asking you to change.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I have to correct the record. Firefighters across the country know that my public safety officer compensation fund bill passed in the House of Commons. Polybrominated diphenyl ethers were banned, and environmentalists know that that as well is work that we did in the House of Commons. And I could go on, but I only have 2 minutes, so I want to correct the record. It was simply false to pretend that we have not actually succeeded in getting the House of Commons to endorse these important measures that I brought forward as your Member of Parliament. Families in this area and right across the country are struggling. Record debt levels, worst in our history. And when we talk to Canadians, we know that on an average month, about half of Canadian families are just $200 away from not being able to pay their bills. At the same time, the Liberal government has given $14 billion to the banking industry last November and wants to put $17 billion forward in the Trans Mountain Pipeline. And that is setting aside the $25 to $40 billion that the BBO tells us is escaping this country every year in overseas tax havens. And so what we need to do is put those resources to work for you. The things that we've mentioned tonight, affordable housing, pharmacare, childcare, ensuring that everyone has access to post-secondary education without a $50,000 or $60,000 debt load, ensuring those things and putting in place as well climate action so that we can create the new jobs in the prosperous clean economy, clean energy economy of tomorrow. Those are all the investments that can be done. And Jagmeet Singh has spoken very eloquently to that across the country. The choice is yours, and this is the wonderful thing about democracy. We've had very elegant candidates stepping forward tonight. But the reality is, we need to have more investments here, where regular families, rather than seeing the money going to lobbyists, to overseas tax havens, and to big mega projects that do not make sense. So on October 21st, I hope to have your support again so I can continue good work in Ottawa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hanson Jim.
Thank you. I want to start off by thanking everyone here. It has been a wonderful experience. Nothing is like learning it. As I said before, I'm brand new to this, and I appreciate the experience. Thank you guys so much for your time. I'm going to finish off with some of the things I've been saying to a lot of people is, just based on the conversations I've had with people, many are looking for change. What that change is, who knows? But I will speak to this, that it's like there's a reason why there's many people who have become disenfranchised with politics in general. And I'm going to appeal to you and say, this is an election of values. Vote for your values. Don't just do a protest vote. We saw how well that turned out in Alberta. We've gotten to this point with people feeling that there's something wrong, but they can't put their finger on it for a reason. They're not voting for their values. They've been just voting someone out. So I'm going to ask that on October 21st, think about Canada. What do you want to see in government? And vote for that. Thank you.
I believe that's all of you. As a political scientist and a former professor of political science and economics, I'm reminded tonight of how important an open and very respectful dialogue is in a vibrant and thriving democracy. We've also been reminded in this campaign that a day is a long time in politics. On October 21st, many days away, I urge you, the voters, to get out and vote for the vision, the values, the future, the ideals that you want to guide this constituency and Canada for the next 4 years. To your sponsor for this evening, the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, thank you so much for your commitment to an informed dialogue. To our youth volunteers and the youth ambassadors of New Westminster, thank you for your assistance and demonstration that this election is about the future we all share. Your engagement in democracy and the democratic process is truly exceptional and exemplary. To our New West Chamber of Commerce volunteers, thanks for hosting this event at the amazing Justice Institute of British Columbia, a true community partner. Candidates, I know very well that it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of courage to put your name forward to stand for office. We applaud each and every one of you for doing so, and we thank you for your very considered comments here tonight. And with that, I now turn it back to Arnold Smith, President of the New Westminster Chamber of Commerce, for his remarks.
Thank you to Scott for doing an amazing job keeping on. I'll be really brief. I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I also want to let you know that nominations are now open for the Platinum Awards. This is our homegrown awarding of businesses. It's a great way to reward the shops you love to shop at here in New Westminster. We have a fantastic networking event happening tomorrow night at the Queen's Park Healthcare Foundation, so come on out to that. It's going to be great. Also in October, we have some great events. Our Spark series, which is in partnership with the New Westminster Public Library, and it's educating businesses on how to use social media to grow their business, happens on October 16th. We're also doing a Small Business BC pop-up at the 100 Ray Street Studios. That's all. Once again, thanks to our sponsor, the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. Thanks again to the candidates, and have a great night. Thanks to all of you. Don't forget to vote.